Just down the road from where I live, the store is trying out a new retail marriage, pricey eyewear and photography books. Its patron saint ought to be Ralph Eugene Maillard, who was an optician and a photographer, but his books, as far as I could make out, were nowhere to be seen. The volume in the window that caught my eye, possibly because the cover image was of a barber shop window, was Fred Herzog's Modern Color. Herzog's work offers the latest instance of a form of eye exam that has enjoyed increasing visibility in the last several years. Traditionally, exams test your knowledge of the syllabus. These latest exams, by contrast, reveal the syllabus to be in a state of constant revision. Histories of photography require enough newly discovered names to be inserted in the middle chapters as to shuffle or reshape the accepted narrative. Especially when it comes to color. So much color work, it turns out, was being done before William Eggleston's paradigm-shifting show of color photographs at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 1976. Along with Sol Leiter, Luigi Curry and others, Herzog is a pioneer who mastered color photography before such a thing respectably existed. Another photographer lifted retrospectively from obscurity, William Gedney, copied out in his notebooks some lines from W.H. Auden's In Praise of Limestone examined this region of short distances and definite places. Herzog, born in Germany in 1930, immigrated to Canada in 1952, where he lived out the poet's admonition with benign dedication. Although he took some photographs in various places in the world, Vancouver remained his colorful stamping ground from the late 1950s onward. As with Leiter, the sense of a distinct and determining sensibility is enhanced by the relatively limited geographical frame of reference. Because the same bits of real estate crop up in multiple frames, a given view can be triangulated with other shots so that we are enclosed within an artist's world. To look at Herzog's work is to inhabit it. A quiet belter of a photograph from 1968, Man with Bandage, might justifiably be called Herzog's signature shot, and not just because one of the many signs on view helpfully directs first-timers to the visitor's bureau. Wires connect the heads of the titular man to the old lady behind him so perfectly that they serve almost as a perspectival diagram. The two are further associated both by his white bandage and her white gloves and by the way that his manly injury wrist is sympathetically echoed by her implied infirmity legs, walking stick. Someone better acquainted with Vancouver's geography and the picture's orientation would know whether the long shadows are pointing toward evening or morning. The shaving cut on the man's chin tends to suggest the hurry of AM, but if this is rush hour, where's the traffic? By the same token, if it's happy hour, where's the happiness? More to the point, where's the bus? Each figure stares into the distance, straining to make out which of the buses routinely promised by the sign might be approaching. The light is hazy, but the man is squinting, as if staring into the face of divine radiance, a reminder that buses are anticipated as eagerly as the second coming and that timetables are best regarded as prophecies of dubious reliability. Who is to say that the bandaged hand did not result from a botched crucifixion served up by the serial obstacles of daily life, with the bloodied tissue paper on his chin covering a wound self-inflicted by safety razor as opposed to a spear in the ribs and the bus stop as a station of the commuters cross. The blob of blood on his chin is amplified, behind the old lady, by what I'm assuming is a mailbox, though the red is so featureless that, if painted, it would appear as a solid abstraction. Beyond that is a dense tangle of signage, which can be more fully decoded in a corroborative or QED sort of way by reference to another photograph taken farther down the street. Thus alerted, the curious visitor soon becomes conscious that Herzog's world, especially as revealed by the abundance of signs, is simultaneously covetous and quasi-religious, sensual and unworldly. The photograph 80 for Mount Pleasant Chapel urges us to give thought to the reason for this holiday season. Okay, to buy stuff. Except even something as practical as a sledgehammer displayed outside the storefront window becomes an article of faith when offered at a sacrifice price. Gamblers at a fair or casino gaze beyond the frame in an ecstasy of optimism, keeping faith with the idea of an against-the-odds windfall aka a miracle, while visitors to an air show turn their eyes skyward as if Christ might, at this very moment, be ascending to heaven. All transactions, however mundane, are the manifestation of some deeper testament of which Herzog is the patient stenographer. Rarely have the neon dreams of night looked as tangible as they do when rendered in Herzogs colors. The relatively lengthy shutter speeds necessitated by Kodachrome, the slow, not very light-sensitive film, meant that Herzog was not only temperamentally unsuited but technically unable to snap events on the flight. In the sly manner of Cartier-Bresson, drama passed him by. He waited for time either to slow down or, in another diagrammatic shot of watches, clocks and cameras in an aptly named second-hand store, to come to a functional standstill. In lieu of the fast time of second-hands and their snatched fractions, a strong sense of photographic history can be seen to converge on Herzog's work. From the past there is Walker Evans, whose photographs Herzog encountered in 1962 or 1963. In the vicinity of Evans' still, often empty buildings, all sense of hurry has vanished. There was no need for Evans himself to rush, because of his faith in his own vocation. It's as though there's a wonderful secret in a certain place, and I can capture it, he claimed. Only I, at this moment, can capture it, and only this moment and only me. I like to think that Herzog accidentally alluded to his great predecessor's sentiment in a picture of a smartly dressed black man on a street corner in San Francisco in 1962. The sign to the right of his head is cropped by the edge of the frame so that only that single word, only, is visible. If the picture had been taken in Alabama, where Evans was photographing in the 1930s, the word would, of course, have had an added and unwelcome abbreviated meaning. Evans famously declared color photography vulgar, and a number of Herzog's shots seem to teeter on that edge. The problem is that Kodachrome encourages reds to blossom so powerfully that unless the slow work of time makes itself felt, eroding, fading, then this red gobbles up attention with the ghastly insistence of a child's plastic plate. At its best, Herzog's color palette is resiliently, sometimes drearily muted, a testament, that word again, to what Jeff Wall, in an introductory essay, calls the aging of paint, the transformation of color over time. Born and bred in Vancouver, Wall is the force converging on Herzog from the other side of Evans, again in several senses. First, he is from the future, our present, living and working in the city at a time when many of the buildings photographed by Herzog have gone the way of those documented by Eugene Hackett in Paris. Second, he represents another alternative to speediness, eschewing decisive moments in favor of large, meticulously constructed tableaus. The stalled life of Wall's streets and sealed interiors is as free of urgency as the painted still lives of old. As it happens, Herzog occasionally chanced upon small-scale walls in real life. In 1973, he had just enough time to preserve kids fighting on a neat square of lawn in such a way as to make it look exactly like the kind of enigmatic scenario painstakingly created by Wall years later. This is not to say that Herzog was ahead of his time. Pictures like the one of the fighting kids have acquired an extra quality, a kind of glow, in the light of Wall. And it's not just that we view Herzog's work differently on the other side of the wall, as it were. Our whole sense of what constitutes the street and street photography has been reconfigured by Wall's art of adamant suspension. Herzog enables us to see this with a clarity that is both new and old.